My name is Amelia Vance, and I stand at the crossroads of destiny, where there was only one choice, a deal with the devil, to save my younger brother's life, Leo. Everything began like this. The click of a gun being cocked echoed softly in the cold darkness of the alley, but to me, it sounded like thunder tearing through the night. An icy gun barrel pressed against my temple, and a hoarse voice, reeking of tobacco mixed with cheap wine, whispered in my ear, 24 hours, kid. Your little brother doesn't pay his debt, then you pay. With everything. My breath hitched, my chest aching as if an invisible hand were squeezing my heart. The musty smell of trash cans, the metallic tang of dried blood, and absolute terror surrounded me. My eyes strained into the darkness, searching for a spark of light, an escape. But there was nothing but cold brick walls and the faint yellow glow of a distant streetlight. No. No way, I muttered, my voice cracking. Leo. He's just a child. Your child caused big trouble. Now, do you want to see him return safe and sound? The thug hissed, his finger tracing the length of the pistol, creating a chilling sensation. My mind spun, images of Leo, my younger brother, weak, pale, appearing like a curse. My boy. Where was he? Was he safe? 24 hours. Only 24 hours. Time slipped away like sand through my fingers, taking my last fragile hope with it. The world around me seemed to sink into a bottomless black hole. Just a few months ago, we were still living a simple life, though difficult, in our small apartment on the outskirts of the city. Our parents died young in a tragic accident, leaving Leo and me adrift. I, with a high school diploma and a minimum wage coffee shop job, tried my best to raise my younger brother. Leo was everything I had, the reason for my existence. But his terrible illness, a rare congenital heart defect, swallowed everything. Medical costs and surgery bills piled up, turning the dream of a bright future into an unbearable burden. I tried everything. Borrowing from friends, pleading with banks, even working night shifts until exhaustion. But it was never enough. Leo's worried, haggard eyes every time I visited him in the hospital, his forced smile when I said everything would be fine. Those images were etched into my mind. I knew Leo was desperate too. He didn't want to be a burden. And then, he made the stupidest decision of his life. I didn't know exactly what he did, only that he got involved with a street gang specializing in predatory loans, people who were willing to do anything to collect a debt. Maybe he heard an attractive offer, a quick way to get money for his treatment. A blind promise. By the time I found out, it was too late. Leo vanished. He left a note with shaky handwriting. I'm sorry, Amelia. I'll fix everything. And then came that terrifying phone call with the coarse, threatening voice. Bring the money, or your boy will never see the sun again. I ran. I ran all over the city, from the police station to the darkest alleys, begging for help. But who would believe a poor girl, a desperate sister? No one. I only received pitying glances, cold rejections. And now, here I was, standing before a gun barrel, with only 24 hours left to save my brother's life. Hot tears streamed down my cheeks, mixing with cold sweat. Helplessness crushed my soul. I would do anything. Anything to save Leo, even if it meant trading my soul. Suddenly, a cold breath drifted across the back of my neck, not from the wind, but from a presence. A strange scent, mint and sandalwood, mixed with something metallic, sharp and cold. The thug behind me groaned weakly, then a loud thud echoed, like a sack dropping. I spun around, my heart pounding, ready to face whatever came next. And then I saw him. Standing there, beneath the dim streetlights, his silhouette was long, tall, and authoritative like a god of darkness. His bespoke suit was perfectly tailored over his broad shoulders, without a wrinkle, as if he had just stepped out of a fashion magazine. But it wasn't the luxurious clothes that captivated my gaze. It was his eyes. Amber eyes, sharp as winter ice but concealing a dark fire, burning everything in its path. His raven hair was slicked back neatly, revealing a high forehead and angular, resolute features on his face. A dangerous, mesmerizing beauty that I had never seen before. Next to his meticulously polished leather shoes lay the motionless thug, a streak of bright red blood spreading out on the damp pavement. Not a sound, not a warning. Everything happened so fast I couldn't even register it. That man, who was he? "What is your name?" His deep voice resonated in the silent space, but it carried an absolute authority that made me shiver. He wasn't asking, he was commanding. Every syllable spoken seemed molded from steel, sharp and uncompromising. Amelia Vance," I stammered, my throat dry. The amber eyes swept over me, paused at the pistol lying abandoned on the ground, then returned to look straight into me, as if reading every fear and despair in my soul. A slight, cold smirk appeared at the corner of his lips. Julian Thorne. He introduced his name, like a king bestowing a blessing upon a subject. That name, it carried a weight, an invisible power. "I know about your brother's situation." The man named Julian's voice rang out again, breaking the tense silence. "They gave you 24 hours. I can do much more than that." My heart hammered in my chest. More than that? I looked up into those amber eyes, which held no pity, only cold calculation and a terrifying power. He was a hunter, and I, an exhausted prey. The distance between us wasn't just physical, but the distance between two worlds, one of poverty and helplessness, and the other of absolute power, overwhelming luxury I only saw in movies. The light of my life was flickering, about to go out, and he, an eternal darkness, cold and mysterious. What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling, though deep down, I knew I was ready for any offer. Julian Thorne took another step, closing the distance between us. I could feel the heat from his body, the dominance of his presence. The mint, sandalwood, and steel scent grew stronger. "I want you." He said it simply, directly, without a hint of hesitation or emotion. "In exchange for your brother's life, you will belong to me. Forever." Forever. Those two words echoed in my mind, both a promise of salvation and a curse. I looked into Julian Thorne's bottomless eyes, which hid indecipherable secrets, unshakable power. He was a trap, a gilded cage I was rushing into. But what other choice did I have? None. Leo needed me. Agreed. I forced the word out, knowing I had just sold my soul to a stranger. "I agree." Another smirk appeared on his cold face. This time, it held a touch of satisfaction, a hint of possession. A wise decision. He extended his hand, large hand, his fingers long, powerful, and defined. "Let's go, Amelia. Your time is running out." I placed my trembling hand in his warm, firm palm. An electric current jolted through me, a feeling of both terror and shelter. From that moment, I knew my life had taken an entirely new, unpredictable turn, plunged into the darkness and possession of this man. And I wondered, was that a promise or a sentence? The dim streetlights of the alley receded behind us, giving way to streets brilliant with crystal chandeliers and sparkling skyscrapers. I felt like a small fish thrown into the ocean, overwhelmed by the luxurious world Julian Thorne lived in. The expensive car glided smoothly on the road, perfectly soundproofed, separating us from all the noise of the outside world. The leather seats were soft, the air faintly scented with precious wood and a hint of the owner's distinct masculine cologne. Everything was too alien, too overwhelming for a girl like me, whose life revolved around unpaid bills and the worry for my brother's life. I sat next to the man, Julian Thorne, feeling his powerful presence even when he didn't say a word. My eyes continuously sneaked glances at him. He didn't turn back, his gaze fixed straight ahead, but I could feel a cold energy radiating from him, an absolute control. He was a statue carved from rare marble, perfect but utterly distant. "Your brother will be brought to my home within the next few hours," his deep voice broke the silence, making me jump. "He will receive the best medical care. All expenses will be covered by me." Hearing that, a small warmth spread in my chest, a feeling of overwhelming relief. But that feeling was quickly replaced by fear. This was a transaction, and I knew the price I had to pay was steep. But why? I asked, my voice still trembling. "Why are you doing this?" The man didn't answer immediately. He just tilted his head slightly, his eyes sweeping over me again, slowly, as if assessing a valuable object. "Everyone has a weakness, Amelia," he said, his tone full of implication. "And you, with your innocence and kindness, you are a valuable weakness." A weakness? Me? His words confused me. I wondered, what did he see in me that no one else saw? Or was he just seeing a tool, a puppet in his game of power? When the car stopped, I realized we were in front of a vast mansion, a blend of classical and modern architecture, standing tall like a fortress in the night. The artistic iron gate opened silently, revealing a meticulously maintained garden, with paved paths leading right to the main entrance. Warm yellow light streamed from inside, creating a scene completely opposite to the dark alley I had just left. This was Julian Thorne's world, a world of ultimate wealth and unspoken secrets. Stepping inside, I felt like I had wandered into an art museum. Expensive paintings on the walls, intricately sculpted statues, and a marble spiral staircase leading up to the upper floors. But what I noticed most was the silence. No talking, no laughter. Only a terrifying, solemn tranquility. "This will be your home," Julian Thorne said, his voice echoing in the large space. "You will have everything you need. But in return, you must understand that you belong to me." He emphasized the word belong like an unshakable reminder. I was led to a spacious, luxurious room with windows overlooking the garden. Everything was brand new, spotless, but lacked the warmth of a real home. I felt like a bird locked in a gilded cage. Safe, but not free. A few hours later, Leo was brought back. I hugged my younger brother, tears streaming down nonstop. He was pale, weak, but still breathing. The doctors Julian Thorne hired took meticulous care of Leo, bringing the most modern medical equipment. I could see a spark of hope, a chance for Leo to live. But I also knew that spark of light was bought with my own life. In the following days, I gradually discovered a part of Julian Thorne's world. He was a mysterious man, with complex connections in the elite circles and also the hidden corners of society. I often saw him sitting in his study, through the frosted glass, making phone calls full of authority, giving cold instructions. He ran a vast empire, but I didn't know exactly what it was. One afternoon, when Leo was sleeping soundly after his treatment sessions, I sat alone in his library, a massive room with towering bookshelves. I browsed the titles, from classic literature to books on law, economics, and even criminal history. That's when I saw it. A carefully clipped file, hidden among the old books. The file title wasn't explicit, only a code number. Curiosity urged me to open it. Inside were photos, investigation reports, and familiar names. It was the gang that had threatened Leo. But the terrifying part was the information about Julian Thorne. He wasn't just a successful businessman. He was a judge, an executioner in the underworld, setting the rules and punishing the violators. His handwritten notes, cold and detailed, described how he handled each case, how he eliminated those who harmed the innocent, especially women and children. A haunting story about a little girl who had been ruined by a gang, and the sheer fury in Julian Thorne's every written word when speaking about avenging her. I shivered. Was this the obsession? The weakness he mentioned? I suddenly understood a part of Julian Thorne's motivation. He wasn't simply a cruel man. He was a man obsessed with protecting the vulnerable, the victims of violence and injustice, especially innocent children. The loss of that little girl, perhaps his sister, had turned him into an angel of vengeance in his own dark world. He saw my weakness, my desperation, and Leo's vulnerability, and that triggered his brutal protective instinct. He wasn't a pure hero, but he had his own code of ethics, even if it was built on a foundation of violence. However, I also felt a great unease. His methods were too ruthless, too final. Could he become a threat to me and Leo ourselves once his goal was achieved? Was the safety he provided a cage cast in gold? During those days, I also witnessed another side of Julian Thorne, a side that was surprisingly gentle. He often visited Leo when the boy was sleeping, just standing there, quietly looking at my brother with a contemplative gaze. Once, I caught him gently stroking Leo's hair, an unusually soft gesture from a cold man like him. One evening, I couldn't sleep, so I wandered down to the kitchen and found him reading under a dim light. He didn't command, didn't scold, but simply poured me a cup of herbal tea and sat there, silently listening to me tell about my childhood with Leo. It was a rare moment of peace, where the tension seemed to melt away. I saw a Julian Thorne who was neither the hunter nor the executioner, but a lonely man, hiding deep scars in his soul. He didn't talk much, but his presence, his silent listening, gave me a strange sense of security. I began to wonder, was there a light hidden deep within his darkness? And I questioned, was I being drawn into the vortex of a dangerous man, or was I slowly discovering a heartbreaking truth hidden beneath this man's cold exterior? That rare peace lasted only a short time, like a fragile breath before a storm. I knew Julian Thorne had acted to save Leo. He had begun eliminating those who dared to touch my brother, those who dared to challenge his authority. But I hadn't anticipated that the threat wouldn't stop in dark alleys or at secret deals. It would find its way right to my sanctuary, find its way to me. It was a pouring rainy evening, the raindrops whipping against the large glass windows of the library. I was sitting reading, occasionally glancing at Leo, who was sleeping peacefully in the fully equipped medical room right next door. Julian Thorne was in his study. The phone calls were continuous, signaling the rising tension in his world. Suddenly, a strange noise from the backyard startled me. Not the rain, but the sound of metal scraping, then glass shattering loudly. My heart pounded. "Julian!" I gasped, but my voice was drowned out by the rain and the continuous sound of shattering glass. I ran into the hallway, trying to find him. Just then, the library door was kicked open, and 3 large figures, dressed in black, faces covered with scarves, rushed in. Their eyes swept over me, full of bloodlust and hatred. "There's Thorne's girl," one hissed, his voice full of resentment. They didn't come for Leo. They came for me, to take revenge on Julian Thorne, to strike at the weakness he had created. Me. One rushed me, his rough hand tightening around my arm, pulling me forward violently. I struggled, screamed, but my cries seemed hopeless. Their strength was immense. I felt an ultimate fear surround me, a horror 100 times worse than the one in the alley. This time, they weren't just threatening. They were going to hurt me. "Let her go!" An icy voice, echoing like thunder in the rainy night, cut through all the noise. Julian Thorne. He appeared from the end of the hallway, his steps steady, each stride descending with invisible pressure. No gun, no visible weapon, but his presence alone was enough to make the air thicken. His amber eyes blazed with a dark, fierce fire, no longer cold calculation, but utter rage. His hair was slightly messy, a few raindrops clinging to it, but his appearance still radiated deadly danger. The 3 thugs paused, recognizing the threat from this man. They knew Julian Thorne. They knew his reputation. "You think you can touch what's mine?" Julian Thorne roared, his voice low and hoarse, carrying such force that it made me tremble. She is my fire, my breath, my darkness." The way he emphasized the word "my" made me feel both terrified and protected. I was an object, but a precious object, that no one was allowed to harm. One thug, seemingly the leader, regained his composure. He pulled a shining knife from his jacket. "Thorn, you broke the rules. You killed our men. You will pay. And this girl, she will be the price." But before he could finish his sentence, Julian Thorn acted. He didn't run, didn't hurry. He moved like a shadow, astonishingly fast. A lightning-fast punch to the leader's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Then a vicious kick to the gut of another, making him collapse, clutching his stomach and writhing. Julian Thorn wasn't a street fighter. He was a well-trained combat machine, every move precise, brutal, and effective. I stood there, eyes wide, witnessing a scene of horrific yet mesmerizing violence. He wasn't just fighting, he was punishing. Every strike carried his accumulated rage, his determination to protect me at all costs. Red blood spattered. Groans echoed. His scent of mint and sandalwood now mixed with the smell of blood and sweat. While Julian Thorn decisively dealt with the two thugs, the remaining one, the one holding me, suddenly pulled out a pistol. He pressed the barrel against my temple, his face twisted with madness. "Stop. Stop right there. Thorn, or I'll shoot." Julian Thorn's every movement ceased. He stood still, his amber eyes staring at me, then at the gun barrel pressed against my head. In that moment, I saw a flicker of fire erupt in his eyes, a frantic, despairing madness. But it quickly vanished, replaced by a terrifying calm. "You think I'll let you harm her?" Julian Thorn said, his voice subtly trembling, yet carrying a chilling deadliness. "You don't understand. She is my fire, my breath, my darkness." He moved again, but not toward us. He glided toward a nearby table, quick as a flash, and I only caught sight of something glistening in his hand. A small dagger, gripped tightly between his fingers. "Release her, and I'll give you a quick death." The thug sneered, his finger starting to squeeze the trigger. But he didn't know who he was dealing with. Julian Thorn didn't wait. He threw the dagger. Without a sound, without warning. The dagger flew like lightning, piercing straight into the thug's wrist, making him groan in agony, the gun clattering to the floor. Julian Thorn lunged forward, giving him no chance to retaliate. He grabbed the thug by the collar, lifted him up like a rag doll, and slammed him hard against the wall. The sound of bones cracking echoed. The thug collapsed, motionless. Everything happened too fast, too brutal. I stood there, trembling, looking at Julian Thorn. His face was now fierce, a tiny streak of blood on the corner of his lip. He was no longer the cold, mysterious man I usually saw. He was a predator, just freed from his chains. He turned back to look at me, his amber eyes still tinged with savagery. He stepped close, his large, warm hand gently touching my cheek, stroking it. "Are you okay, Amelia?" His voice softened, surprisingly tender, as if he had just woken from a nightmare. I'm okay," I whispered, still dazed. He embraced me, a suffocatingly tight hug, as if wanting to crush me into his chest. The scent of mint, sandalwood, and blood. A strange, haunting mixture. I could feel his powerful heartbeat, the heat of his body. In his arms, I felt safe, but at the same time realized I was being pulled into a dangerous vortex, where violence and passion intertwined. Never. "Never leave me, Amelia," he whispered into my ear, his voice low and hoarse, full of possession. "You belong to me. Every breath, every beat of your heart. You are mine alone. No one can steal you away." Those words, both a pledge of protection and a terrifying declaration of ownership. I knew that from this moment on, Julian Thorn would never let me leave him. I was his, forever. After that terrifying, stormy night, the mansion fell into a heavy silence. The smell of blood had been cleaned up. The traces of the battle had vanished, but the haunting memory remained. I couldn't sleep. The image of the fallen thugs, Julian Thorne's fiercely cold face, and his possessive embrace kept flashing vividly in my mind. I hated myself, hated the sense of security he provided, hated the way I was drawn to his brutality and power. I was a decent girl, one who believed in law and justice, but now I was living in the world of a man who made his own rules, and I was protected by his most violent actions. Leo was stable, but I still had 24 hours to get my brother out of here, out of this dangerous world. That was the promise I had made to myself, even though I knew I had signed a contract with Julian Thorne. But how could I leave? He would never allow it. And deep down, a part of me, the part I hated the most, didn't want to leave that protective embrace. I was trapped. Julian Thorne disappeared after the fight. He left to finish what he had started, completely dismantling the gang that dared to threaten me and Leo. He said nothing, only giving me a deep, knowing look before leaving. Don't worry, Amelia. Everything will end. His voice was low, but heavy with conviction. I spent the whole day in tired, tense anticipation. Every small noise startled me. Leo was still sleeping, and I sat by his bed, stroking his pale hair. I wondered, had I made the right decision? Was I trading Leo's life for my very soul? I closed my eyes, feeling the inner conflict. I wanted to escape Julian Thorne, escape his dark world, but I was pulled back by an invisible thread, a strange, haunting attraction. He was the only light in my darkness, but also the greatest shadow. Night slowly fell, and Julian Thorne still hadn't returned. The clock ticked. Time stretched slowly like an eon. I paced the vast living room, feeling a growing unease. He had promised to return. He had promised to protect me. But in his world, anything could happen. Suddenly, I heard the main door open. My heart pounded erratically. Julian? I ran out, and I saw him. Standing there, beneath the dim light, Julian Thorne no longer had his usual imposing, authoritative look. His bespoke suit was ripped, revealing a large, bleeding wound on his shoulder. His dark hair hung down his forehead, partially covering his pale face. His breathing was heavy. Every breath carried extreme exhaustion. He had fought, and he was seriously wounded. "Julian!" I cried out, running to him. "You're hurt." He just nodded slightly, a weak smile appearing on the corner of his lips. "It's all over," he said, his voice hoarse. "They will never bother you and Leo again." But he couldn't stand straight anymore. Julian Thorne collapsed, his entire body trembling. I held him, trying to keep him upright. The warm feeling of his blood soaked through my shirt, a thick, metallic smell hitting my nose. I looked at his wound, deep and terrifying. "You." "What did you do?" "Protected what's mine," he whispered, his amber eyes looking straight into me, no longer coldness, but a weakness, a surrender. "You. And Leo, you are mine." I helped him, almost dragging him into the medical room where Leo was sleeping. I no longer thought about running away, no longer hated myself for being attracted to him. All I could think about now was saving Julian Thorne. He sacrificed himself for me, for Leo. He traded his blood and his life to keep his promise. I tore off his shirt, trying to stop the bleeding. My hands trembled, but I forced myself to be calm. I had learned a little first aid when I was young, and I tried to apply everything I knew. He lay there, breathing heavily, his eyes still fixed on me. In his gaze, I saw an intense love, an absolute possession, and boundless trust. "You did that for us," I said, tears streaming down my cheeks. "You almost died." "Nothing is more important than you," Julian Thorne whispered, his weak hand reaching up to touch my cheek. "Nothing. You are my breath, my life." It wasn't a sweet declaration of love, but a statement of possession, an affirmation of his power over me. But in that moment, amidst the smell of blood, fear, and despair, I no longer felt fear. I felt loved, protected in the most brutal and primal way. His love wasn't a bouquet of roses, but a sharp sword, ready to strike down every threat. Once I had temporarily bandaged his wound, Julian Thorne squeezed my hand tightly. Your promise. Do you still remember it? He asked, his voice hoarse. I looked into his amber eyes, where pain mixed with determination. I remember, I said, my voice also trembling. I belong to you, forever. He smiled faintly, a weak but satisfied smile. Good. In that moment, I realized I had no other choice. I had been pulled into his world, bound by my promise and by the very complex feelings I had for him. His love was an enveloping darkness, but also the absolute safety I had never had. And I wondered, could I find happiness in this darkness? Or would I be completely consumed by this dangerous, brutal man who sacrificed everything for me? The following days passed like a faint dream. Julian Thorne recovered miraculously, although the scar on his shoulder would be a permanent reminder of that night. He was still the cold, powerful man, but something had changed between us. An invisible, tighter bond connected us, woven with blood and promises. Leo was also gradually recovering. His smile had returned. I had saved my brother, but the price was my whole life. One afternoon, as the setting sun dyed the sky red, I sat by the window, looking out at the garden. Julian Thorne came up, silently, standing behind me. Amelia, he called, his voice deep, carrying a profound sadness I had never heard. I turned back, looking into his amber eyes. In them, I saw an unusual tenderness, an acceptance of fate. What is it, Julian? He didn't answer immediately, just gently placed his hand on my shoulder. It's over. The troublemakers are gone. You and Leo will be safe. Forever. But what about you? I asked, a bad premonition rising in my heart. A sad smile appeared on his lips. I broke too many rules, Amelia. My world doesn't accept weakness. And you? You are my biggest weakness. He looked into my eyes, his gaze full of affection, full of regret. I promise to protect you, and I will keep that promise, at any cost. Suddenly, I felt a slight dizziness. Everything around me seemed to spin. I looked at his hand tightly gripping mine, and I saw a tiny, fresh streak of blood appear on his skin. Julian. What? What are you doing? He smiled lightly, a strangely peaceful smile. A farewell, my love. A promise that never ends. My strength suddenly drained away. I looked into his eyes, and I saw a final flicker of light in them, a spark full of love and sacrifice. I will return, he whispered, his voice fading, dissolving into the air like smoke. I will always find you, no matter where. And then he collapsed. So gently, so peacefully, like a final lullaby. Julian Thorne had ended everything himself, to protect me, to atone for the sins he had committed, and to keep the promise of eternal safety for me and Leo. He chose to sacrifice himself, so I could live a life unburdened by his darkness. I held his cold body, tears streaming down like rain. Pain tore through my heart, but at the same time, I felt a strange peace. He was gone, but he had taken all the threats, all the burdens with him. He left me a new life, a future without fear. A few months later, Leo and I moved to a small house in the suburbs, a peaceful place, full of sunlight. Leo had fully recovered. He was back in school, laughing innocently again. Life had returned to normal, but it could never be the same as before. Whenever I saw the sunset, or heard a melancholic song, I remembered Julian Thorne, the man who arrived like a storm, loved me with a brutally possessive love, and left so I could live. One morning, as I was watering the garden, I felt a sudden wave of nausea. A week later, the test results showed I was pregnant. I cried, not out of fear, but out of a happiness mixed with deep sorrow. A part of Julian Thorne was still alive in me, a symbol of our tragic yet eternal love, a seed for the future. "We will never forget him, my son," I whispered, stroking my belly, where a small life was growing. "He gave us a chance to live, to love." Every night, I still look up at the starry sky, and I wonder, did he truly go far away? Or was his promise, "I will return," just a way of saying he would always watch over me, from a place I couldn't see? Or was it a curse, that no matter where I am, my soul belongs to him, forever? I don't know. But I know that Julian Thorne, my man of darkness, taught me a lesson about love and sacrifice. A dark, tragic love story, yet full of hope, about a girl who agreed to trade everything to save her loved one and found a strange love beyond all conventional limits. And I wonder, is he somewhere out there, smiling, knowing I carry a part of him, an eternal promise?